Anti-Muslim bigotry is not merely the product of the Trump administration's divisive rhetoric. It is a reflection and continuation of my country's long history of government-sponsored and approved racism and abuse targeting various communities.
My name is Hussam Ayloush, and I'm the Executive Director of the Los Angeles Area Office of CAIR, the Council on American Islamic Relations.
Islamophobia is the product of a reorganized and rebranded white nationalism. President Trump's xenophobic rhetoric and executive orders such as the Muslim ban have certainly helped fuel and normalize that racism.
It seems a lot of the activists in the arena of Muslim activism have come from different backgrounds, because very few of us have decided to go to school to end up doing what we're doing, which is advocating for the rights of Muslims and a better understanding of Islam and Muslims. In the early 90s, much of the challenges had been about dealing with what was perceived as a new immigrant community. Although American Muslims are very diverse, the average American didn't see that diversity. The average American saw Muslims as foreign immigrants coming to America. So one of the challenges was getting to make sure that they know who we are and understand the diversity within the American Muslim community, and dealing with the challenges, the racism that every immigrant community has and continue to have to deal with. The attacks in 2001 made all Muslims become suspects now. The Islamophobia industry managed to shift the narrative in America into, now can we trust Muslims? Who are they? You know, even peaceful and seemingly peaceful Muslims are waiting for some special order or trigger to commit some crimes. You know, pushing a lot of false notions about Islam and Muslims, taking advantage of the fact that most Americans have not had the chance to know a Muslim. So most Americans were ignorant or misinformed about Islam and Muslims, so it was easy to shift them now into seeing their Muslim neighbor as some kind of a unknown threat, possibly. The rest became actually a whole work of an industry of Islamophobic groups. There were 37 groups that actually are fully dedicated to targeting Islam and Muslims, another 33 that do it on a part-time basis. These are fully staffed entities with a budget of $50 million a year, producing material, producing policy, producing media material on blogs, through right-wing media that aims to marginalize and defame Muslims, and specifically American Muslims. To put things in perspective, the Islamophobia industry does not represent a huge public support in the country. Most people in America actually are not racist. Every survey has shown that most people in America might admit not knowing much about Islam and maybe having some negative views, but that's very different than being part of an Islamophobia industry. If anything, one can describe the American public as a victim of Islamophobia, because they are being swayed, they are being misinformed, they're being exploited by that industry. The Islamophobia industry represents a very minute segment of the American population that actually benefits in creating fear of Islam and Muslims. That benefit could be political, because they're driven by ideological fear, ideological views and perspectives. It could be right-wing, white supremacy. It could be neocon views. It could be pro-Israeli right-wing groups who benefit from creating that conflict. It could be economic industries that benefit from wars, the defense industry. It could be public speakers, book authors who now charge large sums of money to make anti-Muslim comments and speeches or books. There are different reasons why they benefit. That's why it's called an industry. They actually manufacture that fear and that misinformation in ways that benefits them economically and otherwise. Our challenge is that it's not going to be easy to sway people involved in the Islamophobia industry to change their views. The reality is our focus should be on the American public. And the American public, once educated, and we've seen that, studies after studies have shown that when an average American is familiar with a Muslim as a neighbor, as a co-worker, maybe a doctor, as a friend, then they are less susceptible to the Islamophobia misinformation campaign. What we are witnessing in the US is maybe the combination of factors that created the perfect storm. In America, Islamophobia is just one reflection, one element of a bigger problem, a more historical problem of racism. Every community has had to deal with some form of an initiation process in America. Now it's the turn of American Muslims to join others in that sense. Not that it's justifiable. So what happens is those elements of racism today, those who are afraid of the other, xenophobic elements within our country, found in Trump and his rhetoric basically a friend and an ally. And similarly, he found in them a nice way to support his base. So it's a mutual interest, a mutual benefit that led to this perfect storm that allowed for President Trump to win. And of course, this is coupled with by a weakness from the other side, the side of moderation, the side of human rights in America that was divided, or maybe didn't think that the voices of intolerance were that organized or that effective. To put things again in perspective, while yes, the president has engaged in anti-Muslim rhetoric, anti-immigrant rhetoric, anti-Latino rhetoric, and other hate and divisive rhetoric, let's not forget that actually the American public responded in ways that actually is very heartwarming.
Let's all be clear. President Trump's order has nothing to do with security.
For example, as soon as the president announced his Muslim ban early January of 2017, the American public, for the most part, reacted with a rejection of this ban in a very spontaneous way and very popular way. We saw tens of thousands of Americans rallying and protesting and showing up at various airports in America to say no ban, basically. We stand by the Muslims. We're all Muslims today. In an expression of solidarity with American Muslims. Today, even those who for many, many years have remained neutral or chose to remain neutral in the ideological debates in America decided to take a side, and that side is on the side of America's diversity, protecting America's Constitution. No matter how much damage the president tries to create with his policies and his rhetoric, we remain a country of laws. We remain a country protected under the Constitution, which guarantees freedom of religion, freedom of speech to all people in America. And I'm not worried about that because most Americans still value this piece of law, this important piece of law, our Constitution. And now realizing that is under threat, they're coming together with all their diversity. Human rights groups, immigrant rights groups, Latino rights groups, Muslim rights groups, African American rights groups, and other groups coming together. This is something new, and some of that credit goes indirectly to the foolishness and the irresponsible behavior and rhetoric of President Trump and those with him. Unlike in a dictatorship where the rulers don't need to convince the public, they say and they order and people have to obey, whether in North Korea, to a great extent probably Russia nowadays moving in that direction, and much of the Arab world. In the US and much of the Western European countries, there is that element where those who benefit from war, those who benefit from polarization, the demonization of others, need to engage with creating an enemy, a boogeyman. And that happens through a media campaign, through misinformation campaign, whether it's about the Afghans, whether it's about Iraqis, whether it's about Palestinians or Syrians, and so on and so forth. That creates an opportunity for us to counter that. We should have a parallel platform by having activists, by working with our allies. We don't operate on isolated islands. We live in communities. We have common interests and common challenges. We can join hands with people who are driven by progressive values. We can find common grounds in so many circles. And people who might be driven by economic interest, who are worried about seeing the economic interest and resources of their own countries, in this case our collective countries, being wasted into these wars that benefit no one except the military and defense industrial complex. So I urge French Muslims to politically organize, find the leadership. There is no need for a completely unified leadership, but a united leadership that is authentic to the needs and the concerns of that community. Find them, support them, rally behind them, and we all will see miracles happening in France as we are currently seeing in many other places, and I'm very hopeful that we'll see that very soon.